In this video, we will learn about joints. What are joints, their function in the body, and their types. So let's start with the basic definition of joints. A joint is also called articulation. It is a point of contact between two or more bones. Joints allow different degrees and types of movement. The science that deals with the study of joints is called arthrology. Now we will learn about classification of joints. Joints are classified into three groups or types. This classification includes structural classification, functional classification, and biomechanical classification. Structural classification is based on the nature of substance connecting the bones, and functional classification is based according to the range of movement that joints allow. And the last, biomechanical classification, refers to how many structures are involved in the formation of joint. Each of these classification further includes three types. In structural classification, there are fibrous joints, cartilaginous joints, and synovial joints. And functional classification includes Synarthrosis, Amphiarthrosis, and Diarthrosis. And biomechanical classification includes simple joints, compound joints, and complex joints. Let's do a detailed study of each type of joint. Starting with the fibrous joints. Fibrous means hard or tough substance, so the name shows these joints are hard and immovable. Bones in the fibrous joints are connected together by fibrous tissues. This fibrous tissue is made up of collagen. These joints have no cavity because the space between the joints is filled with fibrous tissue. They are immovable joints. Example of fibrous joints in the body is sutures, syndesmosis, and gum fosses. Let's do a detailed study of each. Sutures. Sutures are found in the skull. There is a thin layer of fibrous tissue which unites the edges of the bones together. There is no movement at these joints. They are found only in skull. The next type is syndesmosis. There is space between bones. This space is filled with fibrous tissue. The fibrous tissue is arranged either as a bundle or in a sheet-like membrane. We can call it interosseous membrane. Inter mean between and osseous mean bone, so this membrane holds the two bones together. In these joints, slightly movement is possible. Its example is the interosseous membrane between radius and ulna. Next, we have gum fosses. It is like a cone-shaped peg fits into a socket. They are found only in mouth. The only example are the roots of the teeth with the sockets within the jaw. No movement takes place at these joints. Next, we have the cartilaginous joints. In these joints, bones are connected together by cartilage. This cartilage may be hyaline or fibrocartilage. Cartilaginous joints has no cavity because space between the joints is filled with cartilage. In this joint, no or very limited movement take place. Cartilaginous joints is of two types, depending upon the cartilage which is present between the joints. First is primary cartilaginous joints or synchondrosis, and secondary cartilaginous joints or symphysis. In primary cartilaginous joints or synchondrosis, the connecting structure between the bones is hyaline cartilage. Its example is epiphyseal plate, which connects the epiphysis and diaphysis of a growing bone. Next is secondary cartilaginous joints or symphysis. In these joints, the ends of the articular bones are covered by hyaline cartilage, and bones are connected together by a flat disc of fibrocartilage. Its example is the joints which lie in the midline of body, like pubic symphysis and intervertebral disc. These types of joints allow limited movement. Now, the last type of structural classification is synovial joints. Synovial joints have a space between the articulating bones. This space is called synovial cavity. These joints allow a wide range of movement. These joints are classified into two groups. This classification is based either on the shape of articulating surface or on the axis of movement. Now have some look at the structure of synovial joints. The structure of this type of joint is more complicated, but let's note some few features. The ends of the bones are covered by articulating cartilage. There is a space between the bones. This space is joint cavity. It is filled with synovial fluid. This fluid is secreted by a synovial membrane. This synovial fluid is very viscous and prevents friction between the moving bones. The joint is surrounded by two layers. Inner layer is synovial membrane, which secretes synovial fluid, and outer layer is fibrous layer. Capsule is reinforced by ligaments and surrounded by muscles, which provide stability to the joints. Now let's talk about the classification of synovial joints. As we have already discussed, classification of synovial joints is based either on the shape of articulating surface or on the axis of movement. According to the axis of movement, it is of three types: uniaxial, biaxial, and multiaxial. And according to the shape of articulating surface, it is of six types: hinge joints, pivot joints, saddle joints, ellipsoidal joint, ball and socket joint, and plane joints. Now we will discuss about synovial joints according to shape of articular surface. First joint is hinge joint. It is uniaxial joint. It means it allows movement in only one axis. In this joint, the convex surface of one bone fits into the concave surface of another. Its example is elbow joint. Other is pivot joint. The pointed surface of one bone articulates with the ring formed partially by another bone and a ligament. Its example is superior radioulnar joint. The pointed upper end of the radius fits into a ring made by ulna, and it is completed by a ring made by a ligament. Third is saddle joint. It is a biaxial joint. In this joint, the articular surface of one bone is of saddle shape, and the articular surface of the other bone fits into the saddle. Example is carpometacarpal joint of thumb. Movements allowed in these joints are biaxial. Forward and backward movement and side to side movement take place. Next is ellipsoidal joint, which is also known as condylar joint. In this joint, the convex oval-shaped projection of one bone fits into the oval-shaped depression of another bone. Its example is metacarpophalangeal joint. It is a biaxial joint and allows movement along two axes. Flexion and extension and abduction and adduction will take place. Now we have ball and socket joint. In this joint, ball-like surface of one bone fits into a cup-like depression of another bone. Its common example is shoulder joint and hip joint. It is a multiaxial joint, which means it will allow movement in multiple directions. Last is plane joint. In this joint, the articular surfaces are flat or slightly curved. This type of joints are called no-axial joints or plane joints. Its example is intertarsal or intercarpal joints. Now we will learn about stabilizing factors of synovial joints. That how joints get their stability. Synovial joints have three factors of stability. The first one is shape of articular surfaces. It determines what movements are possible. The other is number and position of ligaments. They unite bones and prevent excessive or undesirable motions. The more ligament around the joints, the more stable joint will be. And the third one is muscle tone and tendons crossing the joints. Now we will discuss functional classification of joints, which is based according to the range of movement. It includes three types: Synarthrosis, Amphiarthrosis, and Diarthrosis. Arthrosis means joints. First, we will discuss about synarthrosis. It includes immovable joints. Its example is sutures of skull. Fibrous joints come in this category. Second is amphiarthrosis. These are slightly movable joints. Cartilaginous joints are slightly movable joints. This example is epiphyseal plate and pubic symphysis. Third one is diarthrosis. These are freely movable joints. Its example is synovial joints. Ball and socket joints are freely movable. Now we will discuss about last classification, which is biomechanical classification. This is based on how many structures are involved in the formation of joints. It is of three types: simple joints, compound joint, and complex joint. In simple joints, only two articular surfaces are involved. Example, shoulder joint, which is formed between scapula and humerus. Second is compound joint, which consists of two or more articular surfaces. Its example is wrist joint, which is formed between radius and carpal bones. And third one is complex joint, which is formed between two or more articular surfaces and includes articular disc or meniscus. Its example is knee joint.